Well, good morning to anybody who may be here. I thought I'd mention a couple of things. I was just reading Habakkuk. That's quite a relevant chapter of the Old Bible, I think, in present times. And it's quite dark and chilling at the end, but the very final verse contains the measure of faith, the faith of this prophet and our faith, and shows us the way forward, I think. It's odd, really, because I didn't really want to talk about politics and government and stuff like that. I was more interested in, I don't know whether you'd call it consciousness, and the role played by the Holy Bible in defining what it is. But that's so difficult to talk about those sorts of things. And it seems increasingly that, studying the Bible and studying government in the broadest sense, the way that the world is governed, the rulers of the world and the kings of the world, and the Bible are just becoming increasingly interconnected in every place. And so to delve into these matters is clearly not desired by those who rely on the occult nature of their doings to continue to prosper. So you could say, you'll never get a lot of viewers if you talk about those sorts of things. And that's why I always say you don't want a lot of viewers, but it's nice to have one or two. And, sometimes apparently even more people watch something I've said. And so I'm encouraged that I'm not entirely speaking alone. And it could be a wider circulation also. Not that I've got anything unique to say, but just the general subject and tone of the conversation, I think. Because, the word that's appearing, that we are hearing increasingly, is truth. We have a man at the heart of government who has stated that it is his intention to destroy the Westminster elite, not to join it. And he's asking questions, and the focus is to uncover the truth. Well, he doesn't talk about Jesus Christ, but he uses the word truth. And, truth is Jesus Christ. Truth is the word of God, sharper than any two-edged sword. So, when you unleash that kind of inquiry, people scatter. I had some experience of this. It's as though it's rather like what Molyneux used to call unleashing the sword of, what did he call it? Morality, he said. As soon as you bring morality into a conversation, that was his claim. Now, he wasn't a believer at the time and probably still isn't. But morality, I've looked into that word, and it just means, the customary behaviours, the mores of the people. The issue is truth. It's a deeper issue. Well, he can't use the word truth because he has no standard of truth. You can't speak about truth if it's just a subjective idea, because your thoughts are just as valid as somebody else's. You need two witnesses to establish a matter, and as believers, we have our own senses and our own witness, and we have the witness of the word, so they must be aligned, of course, and they always will be if a man speaks from a position of faith, or a woman. So you could say I have to be careful what I say, and I think I probably do, but I'm not inciting anything hateful or anything like that. I'm sorry that the situation is as it is, and I'm sorry to see that there are people in positions of great power who seem to have got above their station and acted in ways that are just quite plainly treasonous. Treason is quite a serious business. But it must be established in a court of law. I don't want to be making wild claims. I don't know those people. All I know is what I'm told, and that's unfortunately these days is hardly reliable. If one is relying on newspaper reports or television programs or YouTube, which has been quite effectively taken over, you have to be quite careful and discriminating. I mean, my view of society, I actually believe the Truman Show. I think we're living in a Truman Show. I think the reality that we see around us is constructed for the most part, not necessarily by behind the scenes actors, but by willing participants also in our local communities who simply are unable to see clearly. They think in terms of an unconscious philosophy, an unconscious vision of the world that has been artfully built in their mind through propaganda. And peer pressure. But it's a false reality. It's not what's actually present, as it were, which is, just men and women walking the earth. And the more we understand, I suppose, the fundamentals, and the more we realise our enslavement, I think. This is an argument that Molyneux used to make, that we are enslaved and we don't push near the boundary because we don't want to get an electrical shock. It's because it's frightening to do that and potentially very dangerous. So people prefer not to consider that, the truly dreadful condition that, I think we're in. It's the condition, you could say, that Truman was in. A prisoner, in fact. And only welcome in the prison as long as his thinking and his desires remained within the role that had been written for him. It sounds a bit sinister to talk about those things, but sadly, I watched so many of these supposed true things. Starting from the moon landing, you could say, but you could go further back also. But once you realise that that was fake, and that nobody has ever come out and said, yes, it's true, it was fake, and we're very sorry, and we won't do it again. And it was an awful long time ago. It was in the 1960s, I think. And it's just the latest in a long series, and the most perhaps visible now, because I can say that the First World War was basically fake, but that's more difficult to prove and more controversial, of course, because people believe or think that they know that many people lost their lives and are buried in France under those endless rows of crosses. I don't know, perhaps somewhere. But, it's just mathematics, I guess, isn't it? To have such destruction followed by such fecundity in Europe, in my country in particular, but across the world. Such a massive increase in the birth rate wouldn't seem to be commensurate with the destruction of so many men in the space of a few years. They're just questions, they're not provable. But the moon landings, come on, that's been just, there's so much been written and spoken and shown, and there's just no way. And yet they cling to that, surrounded by the guard dogs from the I don't know where they come from. The paid guard dogs, are they, or the lift up academic people who can actually tell you what gravity is and list every single formula that is written in Wikipedia over several pages. I don't know whether there are any such people. I do doubt it. But the truth is, it is emerging. There's no question. And so Jesus Christ is returning to the center of the conversation, as it were, or is retaking his position. And his word is, I think, being read more than ever, and it'll be opposed, of course, still in the church and everywhere. But perhaps the time is coming when it will be revealed even to those who would cover their eyes. And there are so many. And they will be ashamed. And they will come to understand. And the fear of God will return to the land. This is what's lacking. There's just no fear of God. Not just among the pagan and the unbeliever, but also among the supposedly godly men and women. They don't fear, they don't understand the power and majesty that surrounds us, and that is ours for the asking also. We need to pray for our brothers and sisters in England, in America, in Australia, in South Africa, in New Zealand, in Canada, in America, all over the world, all the white nations primarily, because we are the first redemption, as it were. We have the power. We are, through us, God can heal the world and will heal the world. And, he's chosen us for this role. It's not by our own merit. Again, people don't understand when you look in through history and how wonderfully successful England and America and the colonies became, and how good life was and how admired and respected we were. They think it was because we were pretty good folks. No, it's because we were aided by the Lord God, who gave us knowledge and wisdom and understanding, and who kept our enemies at bay, and gave power to our military forces to achieve whatever needed to be achieved, and made our books balance righteously for a while. And then Satan came in. Satan crept in some time ago and has been trying to destroy the system, the beautiful system that was created, and has been quite successful. But he's going to be opposed by spiritual power, the spiritual power of prayer, and the understanding that we are Israel. That's why that is so rigorously opposed. It's so hard to find it, because once our young men and our young martial men, our military people, our mighty men of valor, there still are some. Once they begin to grasp that, then this thing just acquires a momentum of its own. And of course, it's feared by the wicked. But not so much because of our glittering swords and ranks. I mean, we have no swords. We're hardly allowed to have a penknife. But because we can call upon the Lord, and he will strengthen us, and not just strengthen us, but also weaken and destroy anybody who would presume to treat his children in such a way, to treat his chosen people in such a way. It's our own fault originally. I mean, we went away. That's just the nature of the wickedness that is within man. And we followed women, actually. This is why the humbling of women, as mentioned in Isaiah chapter 3, verse 16 onwards, is a precursor to our release from deception, our disingan. God bless this day.